please welcome the CEO of Global Business Travel Association, Suzanne Neufang, the Chief Product and Operations Officer at TripAction's, Nina Herold, and the CEO and founder of Meetingsbooker.com, Ciaran Delaney, for a panel moderated by Skift CEO and founder, Rafat.
I have to unmute. That would help. Okay, all right, folks. Welcome to our first Skift Business Travel and Future Work Conference. We're sort of midway through the conference, and I am very excited about this topic. And personally, I've been talking about this on Twitter, LinkedIn, where the future of work is colliding with the reality of the present and dragging business travel and the meetings industry into the future, or present and then into the future as well. So for me, the exciting part is that the future of work and how that changes will determine how business travel comes back and how meetings industry comes back. And in fact, a lot of collisions are happening between two industries that obviously historically are complementary, but are structured from an industry perspective differently. So I have three panelists that we're going to talk this about. I can't think of three great people that would talk about this. Suzanne, who's the relatively new head of GBTA. Suzanne, how long has it been now?
3 weeks.
3 weeks, wow. So you're very, very new to GBTA, but certainly not new to the business travel sector, HRS, bunch of other career points in the past as well. Nina, who's the Chief Product Officer of TripActions, and Ciaran, who is the founder and CEO of Meetings Booker, which is a very interesting startup that I've admired for many years, not only because he's grown bootstrap for most part, which is what I am a fan of, but now they just did a very interesting deal with Amex GBT that we're going to talk about a bit as well. So let's start with you, Suzanne. So obviously you have a more orchestral view of what's happening in the corporate travel sector. You are doing, I think, a monthly tracker on the business travel side as well. I don't know if it's global or just US, but I know you have new numbers on it. What's the sentiment as we stand here today?
Yeah, the monthly COVID poll that started last fall is still alive and well, and we're just releasing our newest data tomorrow. I think what's new is that we have figured out that employee sentiment to be willing to travel is now at the 50% mark with today's conditions. And it is a global survey. It's usually about 75% North America responded and 25% Europeans. So that's an interesting turn of events that employees want to get back out on the road. And then the other, I think, key point is that 85% of the buyer community who are answering this survey, 85% say that after vaccinations, they would be comfortable getting back to business travel. So vaccinations is a key point, again, for this to resume. And we see that is, depending on the country that everybody lives in, that will be one of the key positions to getting business travel back again.
And are you seeing any variations into the large businesses versus the small and medium businesses? I saw some number, I forget what it was, that small businesses didn't really stop traveling during the pandemic because that was just a necessity for them to survive.
Yeah, we've seen that through our supplier partners who have told us that they're seeing that data, that small and medium businesses and certain sectors such as sports and entertainment, that those who've created bubbles besides the small and medium businesses, that those have been the really healthy sectors throughout this pandemic.
Okay. Nina, you are building tools. You're the Chief Product Officer of TripAction's, a very well-funded startup in the corporate travel space. A lot of buzz about you, obviously, pre-pandemic as well. You're building a new tool, if I got this correctly, to focus on booking travel for remote teams. So explain how that would be different from, say, your original product, and why is that exciting for you?
Yeah, so I think you mentioned this a bit at the beginning, where traditionally the meetings and event space and the corporate travel space have been complementary to each other. And so when I think about this space in an environment where more and more companies are going remote, I think it actually introduces a third type of travel, right? So we have our transient travel, which is TripAction's core business. You have your meetings and events industry, which travel is a part of that industry. And then I think the third element is kind of a subset of that meetings and events industry, but it's more geared towards getting a distributed workforce together on a more regular cadence, because I think the pandemic has proven that human connection is really important. And even as companies decide to give the flexibility to employees to work wherever they want, it's important to still get together. And so I think this is a tool that it's a lightweight tool that is meant for managers, for EAs, to facilitate their team to get together to organize all the logistics around travel, but allow employees to still self-book within policy, but provide that visibility to the manager around the logistics and the spend.
Mm-hmm. And are you seeing, obviously it's a very sort of tech forward tool that you've built at TripActions and as a company, is that I'm guessing among many of the companies, including ours, which is a client of yours as well, are using it, are smaller businesses. Have you seen anything on your platform that says that smaller businesses and smaller medium businesses are continuing travel, and then the larger businesses are waiting more?
Well, so similar to what Suzanne said, I don't think it has to do specifically with the size of the company, but more so the industry that they're in and what their focus is, and could they afford to not travel even during the pandemic. So we've actually had companies of all sizes, from small and medium businesses to enterprise companies, on the TripActions platform, still traveling during the pandemic. And we're seeing companies of all sizes contributing to the recovery that we're starting to see right now.
Okay. Ciaran, the reason I wanted you on this panel was when we talked about future work, and I noticed, even though the name of your company is Meetings Booker, if you go to the homepage, work has become the main word as opposed to meetings. So it's interesting that as you're thinking about meetings as a way to work as opposed to meetings as a way to meetings. And so I'm just wondering, what are you seeing in terms of customer behavior, and what are your forward booking saying?
Yeah, so I think, I suppose our core platform started out really looking at small meetings, Rafat, and allowing people to have the ability to book small meetings on demand. And as we scale that solution, we also started to add in functionality around booking group accommodation.
Mm-hmm. Ciaran, your video just dropped off for a second.
Okay.
Try now.
Workspaces is now a new opportunity that we've built into Meetings Booker, and that really allows clients to enable their employees to search and book workspaces. So a day pass in a co-working space to work for the day on the platform, and that's an area now that we're seeing converging with business travel. In many cases, our newer customers using the platform at enterprise level are real estate directors in organizations who are looking to enable their employees to have the benefits of working from home, but also the ability to access local spaces on their own on a day pass, like in a co-working space, but also to meet their colleagues as well, using the standard kind of meeting reservation solution itself.
And is that the deal? Is that the deal you did with Amex GBT, which is you become sort of a native solution inside of their platform?
Yeah. So with Amex, we had already partnered with them to power a platform they have called Meetings Express. So we did that probably 2 years ago. And Meetings Express is a solution where you can source venues and book them on demand for meetings and group accommodation. And the new Workspaces product brings in this new proposition of booking a day pass, booking a workspace for the day or for a couple of days. So that's a new area really we're seeing rapidly kind of growing demand for, because obviously 25% of people who work from home, it doesn't suit them, right? Because of either facilities or the fact that they're not learning, right? So we're seeing that organizations are now trying to address that by enabling large portion of their workforce to work from home, but also access workspaces and meeting spaces. And we're powering and enabling that for those organizations. And yeah, that's the platform we're also powering for Amex GBT.
And are you seeing any forward booking in terms of larger meetings for larger conference type businesses?
Yeah. So we obviously have different customer base as well, right? So we have enterprise level clients who would have thousands of employees on the platform to self-serve and book, some of those organizations are still in a position where they're waiting for certain elements to be provided, vaccines, etc. So some clients are still in a position where they have the platform, they're ready to go, but they haven't enabled their employees to book yet because there's other strategies in the organization around governing that, which is tied to business travel. On our general platform, on our B2C platform, meetingsbooker.com, we are seeing meetings, recurring now in certain markets. In APAC, for example, Australia and APAC, we're seeing meetings taking place and reservations coming through, smaller meetings, but also people planning larger events. And the same in the UK and also in the US. So I think it's directly related to the market itself and where they are in relation to vaccines and also lockdowns.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the collision between business travel and meetings, Suzanne, you and I talked a little bit about this in a pre-call. Explain why historically the two sectors whose both have travel as part of it have historically been separate, and do you see them colliding in what ways?
Yeah, Ciaran would remember that some of our most popular GBTA, before I got here, back in the day when we met in person, some of our most popular workshops in 2019 were about the collapsing of the separation of the marketing meetings, the big conventions that big companies run and where marketing and sales own those budgets. And then the other transient travel side, which is often a travel operations, facilities, procurement. It can fit in a number of different categories within certain companies. And now what Ciaran is also saying, and what you're seeing as well from Nina, is that there's a third category, which is the departmentally owned budgets that have always been for the offsites. That has also not been touched by those others. So I would say that there are three colliding at the moment, not just two, and that there is a will by companies to want to know how they can work together to leverage buying power, all of that stuff. But that there's now this new added element of duty of care, and how do we use systems and service to be able to get the duty of care element, so that if you're not working from home, they know that you're sitting somewhere else, and that they know that if there's contact tracing and other things that they need to do at some point, that is part of that overall story for the company. So I don't think companies can afford to completely keep them separated anymore, and there is a drive to pull them together.
It'd be very interesting to see what that means, because one of the questions that we asked Paul Abbott earlier as well, I think we also asked, is if there is a certain portion of the world that does become decentralized, obviously you're working on these tools, how would that affect the travel demand? Would it increase? Would it decrease? Obviously nobody knows. It may end up being net canceling out, or maybe if 10% was lost here, 10% was gained there. So I'm just wondering if any of you have thoughts on that.
I actually think it will increase the overall travel that we see coming out of the pandemic, because you will still have your transient travel, you will still have your sales meetings that you need to go visit clients for, you will still have your large meetings and events, but you will have folks who were not business travelers previously. You will have engineers that used to be sitting in an office, sitting next to their coworkers and were never a business traveler, now working remotely, and they will be a business traveler on a monthly or quarterly or biannually basis in order to get together with their team to collaborate and make their company and their product and their work more effective.
We also have some research on that. Our business travel index research says that business travel will probably come back. We're redoing it again this summer to see if there's a change from last fall, but that business travel will come back to 2019 levels in about the 2024, 2025 space. So I think we'll see, and what we see year by year is we're projecting a 21% year-over-year increase this year over last year when the bottom fell out for 3 quarters. So we'll see again with our next 3 months or so that we're redoing the study to see if that holds true. But that ramp up will have a different kind of travel, like Nina says, that there will be different travelers on the road than maybe what there were before.
Also, are you seeing vaccination? Obviously, there's a lot of talk. I know GBTA, I'm sure, is involved in these conversations as well in terms of vaccination as a requirement for companies getting people on the road, whether it's for business travel, whether it's for meetings and stuff. So what's the general sentiment? I guess US is going to be different than Europe. Regulations are there, and the different countries have a different sense of it. So what's your sense in terms of vaccination as a requirement for people, not just to come back to office, but also to work or to travel?
That's company, but we're hearing it's a very company by company specific thing. And most companies we're talking to are not requiring their travelers or employees to get vaccinated in the US or in Europe. And so the idea of a digital health pass or the green pass, we just came out today supporting this effort, is I think an important first step. Private, not hackable, one trip only, so that if you are vaccinated or you're tested and you're negative or you've had COVID, that those things would be reflective and let you go across your business and not have to go through the quarantines that many are still having to face. So we believe that that is the way to get business back on the road again, but do it in a safe and reliable and certainly a private way for the country that the border you're crossing.
And the Green Pass is the one you're talking about, the one in Europe that was just announced today, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And are these digital passport type tools, Nina, do you think they would be built into the corporate travel tools, or would they be a separate or complementary to that?
I think they'll be complementary. So this is something we've already thought a lot about in terms of, I think companies will make their own decisions, travelers will make their own decisions, and then there will be external factors as well, such as what do different countries decide, who is able to enter their borders, what are airlines and hotels requiring. And so I think the role of the travel management company is really to provide that information to travelers, travel managers, and enable all of that to happen very seamlessly. So we're thinking in terms of integrating with all of these different health passport, green pass providers to integrate that into the booking and policy management experience so that travelers have the information in real time that they need to make decisions when booking, and travel managers can institute whatever policies they want that make sense for their company and make sense based on the regulations and restrictions that we're seeing globally.
It'd be interesting. I think the rest of the year is going to be, for lack of a better word, fought between these different types of initiatives on which one wins out for 2022 to be the year where sort of the recovery starts in earnest when a good portion of the world gets vaccinated. From a meetings perspective, Ciaran, I don't know if you're seeing vaccination as a requirement for people to attend meetings. Are you seeing any movement in that, or is there anything in Europe that you've heard?
Yeah, I think I'd echo the comments. I think a lot of organizations are deciding on their strategy for it. I think with our platform, we connect already to the duty of care solutions that organizations have for travel. So all the data around where people are for meetings can be fed into that platform, right? So the company can have full visibility on where people are. And I think what organizations are doing is that they'll allow certain employees to book and to access meetings based on their own criteria, whether it's vaccinations, whether it's restrictions of lockdowns. And once that's decided, then they're enabled on our platform and they can search and book and use the solution directly. I think hybrid meetings are a big factor as well. I think that the ability to book a venue for face-to-face, but also send invitations for people to connect virtually. I think that's something that we're seeing a large demand for, and we've built into Meetings Booker. So I think once the company has their strategy for that, we can enable that on the platform and ensure that it's managed correctly.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting to see what hybrid meetings and hybrid will be the norm going ahead. For a large portion of meetings industry in general, how does that affect business travel in the sense that you used to send, I'm going to make it up, 5 people to the Skift Global Forum, and that cost whatever $15,000. Or you could send 3, but like 10 could join online.
I think that whole area, Rafat, is predominantly unmanaged now. Like 85% of organizations don't have a platform for smaller, simple meetings, right? And pre-COVID, our proposition was more around use our platform to enable you to have visibility on spend and savings. And now it's simply, it's a solution that allows you to have identification of where people are and manage simple meetings and events. And I think every organization has to now have a solution in place for that, right? It's no longer acceptable to let people, attend meetings and not know where they are and not ensure that duty of care is being followed, right? So I think it's been a big shift towards a digital first solution for this space, for simple meetings and workspaces as well. So we've seen a huge kind of growth. We have over 500% growth in new client adoption because, again, it's no longer acceptable, right? You have to have a solution to manage this going forward, and hybrid feeds into that as well.
Let's move on to questions. I think we have 4 or 5 questions already. So one of the audience questions, wondering if the panel sees different countries' tax rules as a barrier to decentralized work, and so a barrier to more travel. I would think that would be a huge issue. And I know there are a bunch of startups being funded to help companies hire remotely anywhere they want. I wonder from a tax perspective, I mean, just between US and UK, I know it's a nightmare of managing if you are a US citizen moving to UK and then being able to be taxed by both countries.
Right. It's not even really just across international borders. It's a U.S. state issue, right?
I guess that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Ciaran. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's international. It's statewide, but I think there's different layers to it. I think that we're seeing a lot of organizations, trying to recruit more remote employees and focusing on talent acquisition. And what they're offering is that they'll give an employee 2 days a week in a local workspace, right? So that's local. That's a local expense. That's a local activity. So instead of only working from home, you have the ability to obviously access a local workspace on the platform. I think there's also going to be a big increase in offsites as organizations are, trying to maintain culture. And that, in many cases, tax won't have a bearing on that, right? It's a short period of time, and it's general travel. I think where it does affect is obviously longer international situations where people are literally leaving the country for a period of time. And yeah, I think that's a challenge. I think in most cases there's a certain period where you can do that. Maybe 3 to 6 months is pretty flexible. But once it becomes a more long-term exercise, there's a lot of tax implications that seem to be a barrier in some cases.
Yeah, and I think companies, it's just part of the bigger picture of companies are going to have to weigh the cost benefit of allowing remote work, right? It is more flexible. You have access to better talent. And in theory, it's less expensive, but you need the tools and the technology to be able to measure that, right? So whether it's your increase in tax or offset by a decrease in office space, but then an increase in travel, right? So you need all the tools and technology that are talking in real time to monitor all of this for your employees to really understand what is the impact on your business as a result of going remote.
Yeah, this is why this sector is so exciting. And I feel like the business travel has been reborn in this excitement of like what's going to happen to the future work that then affects, which is why I'm excited. If you haven't figured out that by now, one of the questions I have is how do hotels position themselves better from there's obviously reimagining of hotel space, whether they're workspace, meeting space, and are they, from your perspective, obviously you work with a lot of hotels, beyond just a very cookie cutter 101, come and stay at our place for a day or two to get away from your home. Do you think they're better positioned to tackle this future work, or co-working, or whatever else is emerging? Any of you?
I think this is a huge opportunity for hotels. I think it's a massive, massive opportunity. And I think the ones that are doing it well are really going to win. I think some great examples of hotels kind of adopting a workspace strategy effectively is Hoxton Hotels. Mm-hmm. They've actually really invested in it. They have a work from product, and there's a location in the hotel that is a co-working space. But the advantage that they have is that it's a destination, right? You can stay there, first of all. You can work there. You can meet. You can eat, right? It's an actual destination. And that's a huge advantage that I think hotels have, that obviously a co-working space doesn't have that same level of accommodation and ancillary facilities within the venue. I think that the issue with hotels, though, is that I think some are kind of bolting it on. Some are kind of, selling their sleeping rooms as workspaces. And I think that can work very effectively. And, in many cases, they're adding that to Meetings Booker, like Radisson and Hyatt have added their workspace solutions to Meetings Booker. But I think one of the things that we're seeing is just that the price point is a factor, right? Because if you're charging $100 for a sleeping room to use as a workspace, there's a co-working space that is charging $25, right? So I think if hotels take it seriously and sort of, if they build it into their strategy and invest in it in a holistic way, like Hoxton have done, for example, I think it's a massive opportunity. And others as well, by selling sleeping rooms, if the price point is right, it's a great product, right? Because it's also it's private and it's safe, and it's you're there on your own and you can get on with your work. But I just think it's how they position it and price it is important.
Yeah. We are unfortunately out of time. I want to leave it at that interesting note, and I'm sure next year when the four of us gather to talk about what happened to the business travel and future of work, I think we'll be a lot further ahead. And I would imagine new companies and new tech that we haven't even thought of yet will emerge from there. So thank you again. Thank you for your time, and hope to speak to all of you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.